Hey everyone. Tonight we don't begin with wars or revolutions, but with a single cut and the liquid poured to forget it. A trembling hand, a copper spoon, and a drop of brown syrup called laudanum. It burned the tongue, numbed the pain, and softened the screams that echoed through battlefield tents and candlelit bedrooms alike. From the Pharaohs' tombs to Victorian parlors, from the hands of surgeons to the pockets of poets, the same opium flowed. Thick as guilt, sweet as mercy, it silenced children, comforted queens, and built empires on the promise of sleep. But every drop had a price: the loss of will, of memory, of mourning. So tonight, as we trace the story of the world's oldest sedative, hit like, subscribe, and drift with me through the smoke, the science, and the sorrow to find out how humanity learned to trade pain for oblivion. As you settle into this journey, let your mind drift back, far past the clatter of our modern world, to a time when the first whispers of civilization began to take root. Imagine, if you will, the sun, a vast, ancient eye, gazing down upon the fertile crescent of Mesopotamia. Around 3000 BCE, the air is thick with the scent of sun-baked earth and the murmur of nascent human endeavor. You are there, standing amidst fields of vivid green, where something extraordinary is about to bloom. And there it is, a breathtaking sight. A field of poppies, their crimson petals unfolding, glistening under that primeval sun. Each petal seems to hold a secret, a soft invitation to a deeper state of being. You reach out, your fingers almost brushing against the delicate silk of a single flower, its beauty almost too perfect, too poignant. This flower, so unassuming in its vibrant splendor, carried a dual gift. On one hand, undeniable beauty, a splash of intense color against the earthy tones of early agriculture. On the other, a profound promise: oblivion, a cessation of pain, a quiet escape from the harsh realities of a world still raw and untamed. The earliest echoes of this discovery come from the very land you are now imagining, Mesopotamia. Here, in what might be called humanity's first pharmacy gardens, these poppies were not merely ornamental. They were cultivated with purpose, tended by hands that understood their profound power. The priests of that era, the earliest custodians of knowledge and healing, looked upon this flower and bestowed upon it a name that perfectly captured its essence. Hulgil, a phrase that translates simply, yet powerfully, to the joy plant. Think of the weight of that name. It wasn't just a painkiller, it was a source of joy, a conduit to a peace that transcended everyday suffering. You can almost feel the reverence, the quiet awe with which these ancient healers approached the poppy. It was used for profound purposes: to soothe agonizing pain, to facilitate sacred rituals where the veil between worlds thinned, to ease the terrifying ordeal of childbirth, and, in moments of ultimate compassion, to grant mercy in the face of incurable suffering, a gentle descent into the final sleep. Consider this for a moment. As the sun dips slightly lower, casting longer shadows across the poppy fields, this was, in essence, the very first anesthesia, humanity's inaugural lesson in forgetting pain. But, as with all powerful lessons, it came with an intricate, shadowed counterpart. It was also, tragically, the very first dependency. The first time the human spirit found solace so profound, so complete, that it yearned for it again and again. You can almost hear the soft sigh of relief, followed by the quiet, insistent whisper of craving. Archaeology reveals these ancient truths with a tender hand. Imagine yourself in a Sumerian dwelling, the air cool and still, as you observe the remnants of long-ago lives. Among the artifacts, you see fragments of ancient jars, their rough clay still holding secrets. Upon careful analysis, scientists have found residues within these vessels, chemical signatures that speak of morphine's most ancient ancestors. It's a silent, almost haunting testament to a practice that began millennia ago. The very fabric of civilization, you might reflect, began when someone, somewhere, looked at their pain, at their struggles, and with a glint of desperation and ingenuity, thought, "Let's farm our escape." A darkly humorous observation, perhaps, but one that rings with a surprising truth. In these fertile lands, as the first seeds of human settlement were sown, so too were the seeds of complex human dilemmas. You see the nascent stages of agriculture, the careful tending of crops, the meticulous harvesting. And intertwined with this foundational act, you observe the slow, insidious growth of a different kind of cultivation, the cultivation of oblivion, addiction, and agriculture, the desire to feed the body and the desire to soothe the soul, were born together, side by side, in the gentle cradle of civilization. The wind whispers through the poppy field, carrying with it echoes of ancient joys and ancient sorrows, as you prepare to journey further to where the river flows towards the sea, and a new empire rises with new medicines. Allow your mind to drift now, as if on the slow, unhurried currents of the Nile, downstream and through the sands of time, to the majestic land of ancient Egypt. The air here carries a different scent, the dry, mineral tang of desert, mixed with the fragrant smoke of incense, and the subtle, earthy aroma of medicines being prepared. It is 1550 BCE, and you are stepping into a civilization renowned for its profound understanding of life, death, and the delicate balance between them. The Ebers Papyrus, a testament to their medical sophistication, unfurls before your inner eye, its hieroglyphs whispering secrets across the millennia. Within its ancient wisdom, you discover a startling prescription opium syrup to be given to crying infants. Imagine the scene: a mother, weary from the unending wails of her child, the stifling heat of her home, reaching for a small vessel, a few drops of the dark, viscous liquid are administered, and then the blessed quiet. The infant's cries subside, replaced by the soft, even breathing of sleep. You can almost feel the mother's profound relief, the heavy burden momentarily lifted. This was a world where pain was omnipresent, and any respite, even for the smallest and most vulnerable, was considered a profound act of mercy. In Egypt, the line between physician, priest, and healer was often blurred. They were the custodians of both the body and the spirit, entrusted with secrets of life and death. These individuals, with their deep knowledge of herbs and rituals, were also, at times, the ones who performed the somber duty of executioners, ensuring a swift and quiet end when deemed necessary. The poppy, in their skilled hands, was a tool of both profound healing and ultimate silence. You begin to understand the complex moral landscape they navigated. A landscape where the same plant could mend a body or gently usher a soul across the threshold. Consider the Pharaohs, those god kings and queens, whose journey to the afterlife was meticulously prepared. As you imagine their elaborate embalming chambers, the sacred oils, and the delicate linen bandages, a striking detail emerges from archaeological findings. Poppy pollen has been discovered within the very wrappings of royal mummies. It's a quiet testament to the flower's pervasive presence, even in death. Was it for comfort in the journey, a final, peaceful offering, or a lingering echo of a life lived? Perhaps, with the gentle assistance of the joy plant, the boundary between healing and eternal silence, between a soothing balm and a final farewell, seems to dissolve in the sands of time, softened by the poppy's touch. Egypt, with its fertile lands and advanced understanding, became more than just a consumer of the poppy. It became a nexus of its influence. The entrepreneurial Phoenicians, masters of the seas, saw the value in this potent elixir. Their sturdy ships, with sails unfurled against the Mediterranean sun, began to carry precious cargo amphorae filled with liquid dreams. From the bustling ports of Egypt, these vessels embarked on journeys across the azure waters, establishing what you might consider the very first global pharmaceutical trade route. Imagine the stories carried on those winds, the whispers of the poppy's power reaching distant shores. It's a thought that brings a wry smile to your lips. Here were a people who built pyramids designed to stand for eternity, monuments to their enduring belief in the afterlife. Yet they also perfected the art of creating drugs that eased the passage through this life and perhaps even prepared them for the next. The ambition for eternity, intertwined with a very human need for immediate relief. As the golden light of the Egyptian sun fades into a soft, twilight purple, you feel the gentle push of the currents, carrying you further along this ancient trade route, towards the shores of Greece, where new gods and new philosophies await the sacred sleep of the poppy. The gentle current of history now carries you across the cerulean expanse of the Mediterranean. From the sun-drenched plains of Egypt to the rugged, olive-treed landscapes of ancient Greece, you step onto a land where philosophy and medicine began to intertwine, where the human intellect sought to understand the world not just through divine will, but through observation and reason. The air here is infused with the salty tang of the sea, the earthy scent of time, and the low hum of intellectual discourse. In the timeless epics of Homer, you encounter the legend of Nepenthe, a mythical drug given to Helen by an Egyptian queen. This drug that makes men forget sorrow resonates deeply with the poppy's known effects. You can almost hear the soft, lulling cadences of the ancient bards recounting tales of warriors returning from arduous campaigns, their minds haunted by memories of battle and loss, finding solace in a draught that could erase the sharp edges of a grief. It was more than just a medicine. It was a pathway to peace, a temporary reprieve from the burdens of existence. You feel a familiar longing, a quiet recognition of humanity's universal need to escape sorrow, even if just for a while. The reverence for the poppy found its place even within the sacred walls of the temples of Asclepius, the Greek god of medicine. Here, amidst the serene courtyards and hushed sanctuaries, healing was a holistic endeavor, blending spiritual ritual with practical remedies. You can envision worshippers and patients seeking divine intervention, partaking in poppy wine rituals. The gentle soporific effects would induce a state of relaxed contemplation, perhaps even vivid dreams, believed to be messages from Asclepius himself. In these sacred spaces, the poppy facilitated a sacred sleep, a journey into the self where healing could begin, guided by both gods and skilled physicians. It was in this vibrant intellectual climate that the towering figure of Hippocrates emerged. Often regarded as the father of medicine, he brought a radical new approach to healing, emphasizing empirical observation over superstition. You can imagine him, a figure of quiet authority, meticulously noting symptoms, experimenting with remedies. He, too, understood the poppy's power. He didn't just use it, he began to define its dosage, recognizing that precise measurements were crucial for both efficacy and safety. You witnessed the birth of clinical observation, the systematic study of disease, even as he wielded the very same plant known for its intoxicating effects. Following in this tradition, the brilliant botanist Theophrastus took up the mantle of scientific inquiry. He meticulously classified different types of poppies, distinguishing between them, documenting their characteristics. This was a foundational step in understanding the plant's diverse properties, marking the first recorded taxonomy of the poppy. You can almost see his hand, steady and precise, sketching the delicate structure of a flower, his mind grappling with the intricacies of the natural world. And as knowledge grew, so did the need for its dissemination. Greek doctors, meticulous in their practice, began to write down their observations and prescriptions. Imagine the feel of cool clay, molded by human hands, inscribed with careful cuneiform or early Greek letters. These were the first prescription tablets, detailed instructions for preparing and administering remedies, many of which would undoubtedly include the poppy. It's a moment of profound realization, the dawn of recorded medical science, inextricably linked with the ancient power of this one flower. A faint, knowing smile might touch your lips as you consider the Hippocratic Oath, that timeless pledge to ethical medical practice. You realize, with a touch of dark humor, that perhaps even the most earnest of oaths came with a side effect. For alongside the noble pursuit of healing, the Greek physicians were navigating the uncharted waters of early pharmacology, a journey marked by trial and error, profound discoveries, and undeniable moments of euphoria. The poppy offered both the ultimate relief and the nascent hint of its demanding nature. As the shadows lengthen over the Acropolis, and the whispers of philosophers mingle with the rustle of olive leaves, you prepare to witness how this knowledge, this powerful seed, will be scaled to the demands of an empire, carried across the seas to Rome, where its use would become widespread and its influence indelible. From the intellectual serenity of Greece, you are now transported with the relentless march of time and empire to the sprawling, bustling heart of ancient Rome. The very air pulses with a different energy here, the clamor of legions, the murmur of senators, the vibrant chaos of a city that commands a vast, expanding world, the scent of roasted meats, the pungent aroma of human activity, and a subtle, underlying medicinal fragrance hang in the air. This is an empire built on conquest, engineering, and, as you will soon discover, an almost insatiable need for effective pain management. In the midst of this grand civilization, you encounter the monumental figure of Galen, a physician of unparalleled influence, whose writings would dominate Western medicine for over 1,000 years. Imagine him, a man of immense learning and tireless dedication, moving through the bustling Roman world, his mind a labyrinth of anatomical and pharmacological knowledge. Galen, in his comprehensive approach. Prescribed opium for everything. Literally, everything. From headaches and fevers to internal ailments. From emotional distress to physical trauma. The poppy's derivative became his go-to remedy. You can almost hear the soft rustle of his scrolls as he dictates another prescription, each one sealing the poppy's place as the supreme panacea of the Roman world. But Galen didn't just prescribe raw opium. He popularized a legendary concoction known as theriac. Visualize this: a rich, honeyed mixture, often containing dozens of ingredients, with opium as its potent core. Theriac wasn't just a medicine. It became the first truly global brand drug. Its fame spread far and wide across the Roman provinces, across the known world. Merchants traded it, physicians swore by it, and emperors consumed it. It was a symbol of Roman medical sophistication and, at the same time, a testament to humanity's enduring desire for a universal cure. You can almost taste the sweet, slightly bitter complexity of it. A taste that promised relief and perhaps a fleeting moment of peace. The reach of Roman power extended far beyond its capital, into the furthest corners of its empire, where legions maintained order and expanded its borders. Imagine the scene on a remote battlefield, or in a military encampment deep in Germania. Legion medics, practical and resourceful, carried small containers of poppy paste for the soldiers, enduring the unimaginable pain of wounds and the psychological toll of constant warfare. This paste became a cherished commodity. They affectionately called it sleep milk, a gentle, almost tender name for a substance that offered temporary respite from the brutal realities of their lives. You can picture a weary, wounded soldier, his face etched with pain, gratefully accepting a dose, feeling the tension drain from his body as sleep mercifully claims him. Even the most revered figures of Rome were not immune to the poppy's allure. Consider Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, a man whose stoic philosophy preached self-control, reason, and emotional fortitude. Yet, you discover he was a nightly addict. Every evening, this paragon of virtue, this titan of philosophical thought, relied on opium to find sleep and perhaps to dull the immense pressures of governing an empire. The irony is palpable. The very philosophy of Stoicism, which encouraged endurance and indifference to pain, was often powered by the narcotic that allowed one to forget it entirely. You realize that even the greatest minds often sought refuge in oblivion, highlighting the deep, universal need for relief from suffering, no matter how elevated one's ideals. As Rome prospered, so did its commerce. Merchants, keen to capitalize on popular demand, profited handsomely from the widespread use of opium and theriac. You see the bustling markets, the steady flow of trade, the fortunes being built on this powerful commodity. Yet, beneath the veneer of prosperity, a shadow lengthened as citizens increasingly relied on these substances. A subtle decay began to set in. This, you realize, was a proto-big pharma phenomenon, a powerful industry growing around a drug that promised everything but subtly eroded the self. A chilling quote from that era might echo in your mind: "All roads lead to Rome, and all veins lead to relief." A powerful, almost prophetic statement about the drug's pervasive reach. The immense machinery of the Roman Empire, you begin to understand, was not solely run on legions and laws, but on a more subtle, yet equally pervasive force: anesthesia. The ability to manage pain, to dull the sharp edges of life, allowed an entire civilization to function, to endure, to conquer. As the grandeur of Rome slowly begins to fade, and the weight of its vastness presses down, you sense an impending shift. The empire may fall, but the powerful formulas, the knowledge of the poppy, will endure, carried through the tumultuous ages, and find new life in the vibrant intellectual hubs of the East, in the scholarly heart of Baghdad. As the grandeur of Rome recedes, leaving behind the echoes of its legions and philosophers, you now find yourself transported, as if by a desert wind carrying ancient knowledge, to the luminous heart of the Islamic Golden Age. The scent of spices, parchment, and intellectual fervor fills the air. This is a time of unparalleled scholarly achievement, a period stretching from roughly the 8th to the 14th century, where knowledge was not just preserved, but actively pursued, questioned, and expanded upon. Baghdad, Damascus, Cairo. These are the vibrant centers of learning, alive with scholars translating, innovating, and pushing the boundaries of human understanding. It is here, in this crucible of intellect, that you witness a profound act of preservation and elevation. The scattered and often complex Greek texts, including those on medicine and botany, which had almost been lost to the sands of time, are diligently rescued. Imagine countless scribes, working under the soft glow of oil lamps, painstakingly translating these ancient scrolls into Arabic. But they don't merely copy, they analyze, critique, and crucially, elevate this inherited knowledge with their own pioneering advancements in chemistry, astronomy, and mathematics. You sense a deep respect for the past, coupled with an insatiable hunger for new discovery. Among these brilliant minds, you encounter Al-Razi, a Persian physician, alchemist, and philosopher of immense stature. His ingenuity leads to a remarkable innovation: anesthetic sponges. Visualize a medical procedure, perhaps a surgical one, a moment of profound pain and fear. Al-Razi's method involves saturating a sponge with a carefully prepared mixture, including vaporized opium and henbane. This sponge would then be placed over the patient's face, allowing them to inhale the potent vapors. You can almost smell the faint herbal sweetness of the concoction as the patient slowly drifts into a peaceful, pain-free slumber. This was a sophisticated, compassionate approach to managing surgical pain, a testament to the era's commitment to alleviating suffering. Then, you encounter the monumental work of Avicenna, a physician whose canon of medicine became a foundational text for centuries. Imagine a towering tome filled with meticulously organized knowledge, the culmination of balanced observation and profound insight. Avicenna's work is remarkable, not just for its encyclopedic scope, but for its clinical precision. Within its pages, you find the first clear warnings about the side effects of opium. He meticulously describes the lethargy it can induce, the dangers of respiratory failure at higher doses, and, perhaps most significantly, the insidious grip of craving, the magnetic pull of dependency. This marks a pivotal moment in the story of opium. For the first time, science, through rigorous observation, truly discovers addiction. It's no longer just a joy plant or a sleep milk with an occasional unfortunate outcome. It is understood in its physiological and psychological dimensions as a force that can bind and control. You witness the birth of a moral data point, a scientific understanding that carries with it an ethical weight: the pursuit of knowledge. you realize, does not always purify a substance of its inherent dangers. Sometimes, it merely perfects the understanding of its temptations. In the burgeoning hospitals of the Islamic world, which were far more advanced than anything seen before, opium was used judiciously for surgery and pain relief. But with its increased and refined application came a somber consequence. Overdose became a clinical term, a recognized medical emergency. You can picture the quiet, desperate efforts of physicians to counteract the poppy's overwhelming power when too much had been given. The precise moment when relief turned to peril. It's a testament to the sophistication of their medical practice that they could identify and categorize such an event. There's a touch of dark humor in realizing that they had discovered anesthesia, a means to avoid pain, and immediately, paradoxically, needed it to cope with its unintended consequences. As the scent of scholarly ink and medicinal herbs hangs in the air, you reflect on this era, the explosion of knowledge in the Islamic Golden Age, while bringing immense benefits, also perfected temptation. The understanding of the poppy became deeper, its preparation more precise, its application more widespread. This knowledge, though noble in its intent, did not remove the inherent dangers. Rather, it illuminated them, making the pathway to oblivion clearer and the potential for dependency more explicit. As the calligraphy of ancient texts fades, you sense a new journey beginning, as caravans gather, ready to carry the science of sleep and the allure of the poppy further eastward along the legendary Silk Road. Leaving the illuminated libraries and advanced hospitals of the Islamic Golden Age, your journey now turns eastward, following the ancient pathways of commerce and culture, the legendary Silk Road. Imagine the vast, undulating desert landscape stretching before you, the air dry and crisp, carrying the scent of dust, distant fires, and the exotic spices that fuel global trade. It is night, and under a sky impossibly vast and glittering with stars, you hear the rhythmic, almost hypnotic sound of camel bells. Long trains of these magnificent creatures, laden with precious cargo, move slowly but steadily across the sands, their shadows dancing in the moonlight. This is more than just a trade route. It is a circulatory system connecting worlds, a conduit for ideas, innovations, and, as you are now observing, powerful plants. Alongside bales of shimmering silk, meticulously crafted glass, and fragrant spices, you see a darker, more potent cargo cakes of dried poppy juice. These dense, dark bricks, carefully wrapped and secured, represent the embodiment of liquid dreams, solidified for transport across vast distances. The sheer scale of this enterprise begins to unfold before you. Here, pharmacology truly met economics. The poppy, now understood with scientific precision thanks to the Islamic scholars, became a commodity of immense value. You are witnessing the birth of the first truly global supply chain for a psychoactive substance. From the fields where the poppies bloomed, through the processes of harvesting and refining, to the long, arduous journey across deserts and mountains. Every step was a testament to the growing demand for its effects. You can almost feel the weight of these cakes, each one representing countless hours of labor and the promise of oblivion. The Silk Road was a crucible of cross-cultural diffusion, and the knowledge of the poppy was no exception. As these caravans journeyed from west to east, they carried not just the drug itself, but also the accumulated wisdom of its use, its preparation, and its effects. Greek and Islamic medical texts, translated and expanded, traveled alongside the physical commodity. Physicians, traders, and travelers exchanged stories and techniques, disseminating a complex understanding of narcotics across diverse cultures. The poppy became a kind of universal language, a silent, diplomatic gesture of calm in a world often fraught with tension. You perceive how deeply interwoven this substance became with the very fabric of global interaction. Imagine a map unfurling in your mind's eye, tracing the intricate network of trade routes. You see the vibrant oases of Samarkand and Bukhara, bustling hubs where East met West, where languages mingled, and where these cakes of dreams were exchanged for silver and other treasures. This was a network not just of commerce, but of oblivion. Each stop along the way representing another point where humanity could access the power of forgetting. The Silk Road, often romanticized for its exotic goods, carried a darker, more profound cargo, the capacity to escape oneself. A wry chuckle might escape your lips as you consider the sheer audacity of it all. History's first startup, you might think, was a drug mule with fur. The camels, stoic and enduring, unknowingly carrying the seeds of both solace and sorrow across continents. Their rhythmic footsteps across the sand seemed to mark the slow, inexorable spread of the poppy's influence. As the last camel bell fades into the desert vastness, and the stars begin their slow turn across the night sky, you realize this journey has led the poppy to a new, fertile homeland, a place where it will not only thrive, but become deeply embedded in the culture and economy, the sun-drenched plains of India. As the echoes of the Silk Road caravans fade behind you, your journey culminates in a land of vibrant colors, rich aromas, and profound spiritual depth. India. The scene shifts dramatically from arid desert to lush, fertile plains, where the sun shines with an almost benevolent intensity. Here, the poppy finds its second homeland, a place where it will flourish, not just as a plant, but as a cultural phenomenon deeply intertwined with art, spirituality, and imperial power. You can almost feel the warmth of the Indian sun on your skin, smell the fragrant spices, and hear the distant melody of a sitar. Imagine fields stretching as far as the eye can see, bursting with the brilliant hues of poppy blooms, crimson, white, purple swaying gently in the Indian breeze. This is a landscape where the poppy doesn't just grow, it thrives, adapting to the rich soil and climate with an intensity that seems to amplify its potent gifts. The sight is both breathtakingly beautiful and, knowing its true nature, subtly disquieting. The ancient Indian system of medicine, Ayurveda, with its holistic approach to health and well-being, recognized the poppy's powerful properties. Unlike cultures where it might have been viewed solely as a recreational substance, Ayurveda integrated opium into its legitimate medicinal practices. You can envision Ayurvedic practitioners, wise and observant, carefully incorporating the poppy into remedies for pain, sleep disorders, and even certain emotional imbalances, always seeking a balance, a path to serenity. It was a tool within a broader system of healing, used with respect and intention. But the poppy's influence extended far beyond medicine, reaching into the very heart of imperial life. The Mughal emperors, known for their opulent courts, artistic patronage, and sophisticated culture, embraced opium in a unique, almost aesthetic way. Imagine yourself in a tranquil Mughal garden, perhaps under the shade of a cypress tree. As an emperor or noble sips a drink called doda, a prepared opium infusion, This was not merely about escaping pain. It was about cultivating a state of serene contemplation, of meditative drift. Poets composed verses under its influence. Artists found inspiration, and rulers sought a different kind of clarity. Poetry written between doses, you might muse, capturing the essence of this creative dependency. Emperor Akbar, a figure known for his administrative acumen and his pursuit of religious harmony, recognized the poppy's widespread use and sought to regulate it. You see his imperial decrees, attempts to control its cultivation and distribution, a testament to its pervasive presence even then. But later, Emperor Jahangir, a more artistic and sensitive soul, fell deeply under its spell, becoming, in essence, its prisoner. His memoirs speak of his increasing reliance, the slow erosion of his will. Even as he continued to govern, you witness the personal cost, even for those at the pinnacle of power. As the Mughal Empire expanded, so too did the cultivation of opium. India, with its vast agricultural capacity and its favorable climate, slowly but surely transformed into the warehouse of the world's sleep. Imagine vast, meticulously tended fields, the milky sap of the poppy capsules being harvested by countless hands. The sheer volume of production was staggering, making India a central player in the global pharmacology of the time. This wasn't just about local use. It was about providing a commodity that would soon travel further, touching every corner of the known world. There's a subtle, almost dark humor in this imperial embrace. Empire management is easier, you might reflect, when everyone's relaxed. The quietude brought by the poppy, whether for the ruling elite or the common citizen, could certainly smooth over the rough edges of administration. As the vibrant colors of the Indian landscape begin to blur, and the rich sense of its culture recede, you sense a new journey on the horizon. Portuguese sailors, with their sturdy ships and insatiable drive for trade, are about to carry the poppy's powerful seed to a new, unsuspecting continent, one that will ultimately be consumed by its smoke china. Your journey now takes a significant turn, across the vast oceans, following the routes of intrepid Portuguese sailors who, driven by the winds of trade, are about to introduce the poppy to a land as ancient and magnificent as any you've encountered China. The air here feels different, rich with the aromas of tea, silk, and the intricate, delicate sense of a civilization that prizes order and harmony. At first, the poppy arrives innocently enough, a seemingly harmless medicine, carried by foreign ships. In the early days of its arrival, under the sophisticated Ming dynasty, the poppy's use was confined to the elite, scholars and aristocrats, always seeking new forms of refinement and pleasure, would dissolve small amounts of opium in wine. Imagine them, in serene gardens or richly decorated chambers, sipping this concoction, experiencing a mild, pleasant indulgence. It was considered an exotic curiosity, a sophisticated tonic to ease the mind and body, not yet a widespread problem. You see the elegance of its initial reception, a gentle introduction into an ancient culture. However, a pivotal moment in this story, a catalyst that would unleash the poppy's true, devastating potential, arrived not from the East, but from the West tobacco, brought from the Americas. Tobacco pipes quickly became popular throughout China. Here, two seemingly disparate substances were destined to meet and ignite a cultural firestorm. The Chinese, already accustomed to the ritual of pipe-smoking tobacco, began to experiment. And then it happened the perfect storm. Someone, somewhere, had the fateful idea to combine opium with tobacco, creating a new, far more potent concoction known as madak. Imagine the distinct, sweet, and heavy scent of opium smoke, mingling with the sharper, earthy aroma of tobacco. This was a game changer. Smoking opium, unlike ingesting it, dramatically increased its potency and hastened its effects. The drug entered the bloodstream almost instantly, bypassing the digestive system, delivering a powerful, immediate rush of euphoria and oblivion. You can feel the profound shift in its impact, the instant gratification it offered. The consequences were swift and devastating. Addiction, once a rare affliction among the elite, began to explode across all strata of Chinese society. Opium dens, once quiet, illicit corners, rapidly proliferated, transforming into common temples of tranquility and escape. Picture these spaces, dim lighting, the heavy, sweet scent of smoke clinging to the air. Individuals reclined on divans, eyes half closed, lost in a world of their own making. For many, these dens offered a temporary refuge from the increasing pressures and anxieties of a rapidly changing world. You see the desperate search for peace, the allure of forgetting. From a scientific perspective, the reason for this explosion of addiction was clear: smoking provided rapid bioavailability. The active compounds in opium, primarily morphine, were absorbed directly into the lungs and then almost instantaneously into the bloodstream, reaching the brain with dizzying speed. This quick delivery system intensified the drug's effects and, tragically, accelerated the development of addiction. It was a stark lesson in the power of pharmacology and the dangerous interplay of different substances. There's a deep moral irony woven into this chapter. Progress, in this instance, was driven by combustion. The adoption of a new technology, smoking, revolutionized the delivery of an ancient drug, unleashing unforeseen consequences on an entire civilization. The very act of inhalation, a simple, primal action, became the gateway to a national crisis. As the smoke curls and dissipates, carrying with it the aspirations and anxieties of a nation, you sense an impending tragedy. A continent, once proud and self-sufficient, is about to forget its duties, its people slowly, silently succumbing to the powerful embrace of the poppy. The smoke, thick and sweet, now hangs heavy over the vast land of China, not just in the opium dens, but metaphorically, over the entire Qing Empire. As you look upon this once proud and powerful civilization, you witness a profound and tragic transformation. The vibrant energy of a functioning empire is slowly being choked, replaced by a pervasive lethargy, a silent surrender to the poppy's insidious embrace. Imagine the scene: Qing officials, once diligent and dedicated, now spending their mornings in a haze, their duties neglected. Generals, their strategic minds once sharp, now dulled by the pipe, their commands lacking conviction. Poets, whose verses once sang of beauty and wisdom, now scribbling fragmented lines in the twilight between doses. Their creativity twisted by dependency. You see an entire society, from the highest echelons of power to the humblest homes, being enslaved by smoke, the collective will of a nation, slowly but surely being eroded. The emperor, recognizing the existential threat posed by this burgeoning addiction, issues stern bans. Imperial edicts are proclaimed, forbidding the import and consumption of opium. But these decrees, however well-intentioned, clash violently with an even more potent force, the immense profits to be made. Corruption, like a dark, creeping vine, wraps itself around the imperial administration. Smugglers and corrupt officials work hand in glove, ensuring that the banned substance continues to flow into the country, feeding the insatiable demand. The black market flourishes, transforming addiction into a perverse form of currency. You witness the painful reality when the stakes are high and the craving is universal. Morality often buckles under the weight of commerce. Here, a critical lesson in the economics of dependence unfolds before your eyes. The more people became addicted, the greater the demand, and the higher the profits for those willing to break the law. Silver, once flowing into China for its precious teas and silks, now drains out of the country in a torrent, exchanged for the very substance that is destroying its people. The nation's wealth is being siphoned away, its economic stability undermined by the pervasive addiction. You hear the quiet, despairing whisper of a truth. You can ban a habit, but you cannot ban a craving. Laws can restrict access, but they cannot erase the deeply rooted psychological and physical need that addiction fosters. The poppy, once a foreign curiosity, has burrowed deep into the cultural fabric, becoming an integral, albeit destructive, part of daily life for millions. Picture the social fabric of China, once strong and vibrant, now unraveling. Families are torn apart, livelihoods are lost, and communities begin to fray. All of this wrapped in the intoxicating, perfumed smoke of the opium dens. The air itself seems to carry the scent of decay, masked by the sweet, deceptive fragrance of the poppy. You feel the profound sorrow of a nation losing its way, its future clouded by a pervasive haze. A chilling reflection emerges from this tableau: the flower, the innocent joy plant of ancient Mesopotamia, now owns the empire. It dictates its economy, saps its strength, and silently presides over its decline. The power dynamic has shifted. Humanity is no longer in control. As the quiet tragedy of a sleeping empire unfolds, you sense the approach of a new, external force. The sails of ships from the west, armed with cannons and contracts, are about to appear on the horizon, ready to exploit this vulnerability and usher in an even darker chapter in the poppy's story. The stage is set for a war, fought not over land or resources, but over the right to sell and consume oblivion. The pervasive haze of opium smoke that clouds the Qing Empire is about to be confronted by a force of unwavering moral conviction. Your attention now shifts to a figure of remarkable integrity and courage, Commissioner Lin Zexu. Imagine him, a scholar by training, a man deeply steeped in Confucian ethics, now thrust into the role of a moral warrior, determined to save his nation from the encroaching scourge of addiction. He is a man driven by a profound sense of duty and a fierce love for his people. In 1839, Lin Zexu arrives in Canton, the heart of the opium trade, with a singular mission to eradicate the illicit traffic. He acts with swift and uncompromising authority. You can almost feel the tension in the air as he confronts the foreign merchants, demanding the surrender of their opium caches. The merchants, accustomed to their lucrative trade, are initially defiant, but Lin's resolve is absolute. Then comes the dramatic, symbolic act that would echo through history. You witness a shocking image. Lin Zexu orders the destruction of over 20,000 chests of opium, confiscated from the foreign traders. Imagine mounds of these dark, sticky cakes, representing millions of dollars in profit, being mixed with salt and lime. then systematically poured into trenches that led directly to the sea. The black sludge, thick and potent, spills into the ocean, a powerful visual declaration that China would no longer tolerate this destructive trade. The sheer scale of the destruction is breathtaking, a monumental gesture of defiance against a powerful economic force. Driven by a profound sense of justice, Lin Zexu takes an extraordinary step. He writes a direct letter to Queen Victoria of Great Britain. In this eloquent and passionate appeal, he meticulously details the devastating effects of opium on the Chinese people, imploring her to intervene and halt the trade. He challenges her, as a moral sovereign, to consider the ethics of an empire that preaches virtue at home but profits from addiction abroad. You can almost hear his voice, reasoned yet urgent, pleading for a recognition of shared humanity over the cold calculations of empire. It's a powerful moment, a direct confrontation between conscience and commerce, between the moral rectitude of an individual and the economic imperatives of a global power. For a brief, shining moment, it feels like a moral victory. The destruction of the opium, the eloquent appeal to the British monarch, the clear stance against addiction, these acts resonate with justice. But you realize, it is a victory that smelled like smoke, a faint triumph against an overwhelming tide. The reaction from Britain is swift, uncompromising, and brutal. The powerful economic interests, the merchants who had lost their fortunes, and the imperial pride of Great Britain could not abide such a challenge. Commissioner Lin's bold actions, intended to save his people, are deemed an affront, a violation of free trade. You sense the shift in the air, the gathering storm of retaliation. Britain, with its superior military technology, particularly its powerful navy, is about to respond with gunboats. The stage is tragically set for a war, not of words, but of fire and steel, to enforce the right to sell a drug. Lin Zexu's noble crusade, instead of bringing peace, has inadvertently ignited the fuse of conflict. The moral stand taken by Commissioner Lin Zexu, though righteous, has now provoked the wrath of an empire. You find yourself standing on the brink of an unprecedented conflict. A war fought not over territorial dispute or ideological differences, but over the right to push a destructive commodity. The year is 1840, and the stage is set for the First Opium War. Imagine the stark contrast on one side, the formidable, technologically advanced forces of the British Empire. Their iron-hulled steamer, the Nemesis, a marvel of naval engineering, cuts through the water with terrifying efficiency. Its cannons, precise and devastating, are symbols of industrial might. On the other side, the valiant but technologically outmatched Chinese junks. Their wooden hulls and traditional weaponry no match for the steam-powered, cannon-laden warships. You witness the brutal reality of technology crushing tradition, the sheer force of modern warfare overwhelming an ancient power. The scenes that unfold are harrowing fire raining down on Chinese coastal defenses, plumes of smoke rising from burning junks, the dense fog of war mingling with the acrid smell of gunpowder. British forces, with their superior firepower and disciplined tactics, systematically bombard coastal cities, seize key ports, and penetrate inland waterways. The Chinese, fighting with courage and desperation, are relentlessly pushed back, their resistance crumbling under the relentless assault. You hear the deafening roar of cannons, the screams of the wounded, the cries of surrender. This was free trade enforced by cannon fire, a chilling precedent for colonial expansion. The human cost is immense, extending far beyond the battlefield. You see not just the soldiers, annihilated by superior weaponry, but the innocent civilians caught in the crossfire. Cities are ravaged, lives are shattered, and the very fabric of society is further weakened by the pervasive opium addiction. The war, ostensibly about trade, becomes a humanitarian disaster, exacerbating the very problem it was supposed to curb. There's a bitter, dark humor in labeling this conflict. You might consider it globalization version 1.0, a stark, brutal initiation into a world where economic interests trumped national sovereignty and human well-being. The pursuit of profit, you realize, often has no conscience, leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. The war concludes with a humiliating defeat for China. The Treaty of Nanking, signed in 1842, is a document of profound injustice. Imagine the Chinese officials, their faces etched with despair, forced to concede to punitive terms. China is compelled to open more ports to foreign trade, pay a massive indemnity to Britain, and, most significantly, cede the strategic island of Hong Kong to British control. You feel the sting of this forced humiliation, the deep wound inflicted upon a proud nation. Hong Kong, a vibrant global city today, was born in the shame of this narcotic war. It stands as a physical testament to the ruthless economic policies and military might that forced opium upon China. As the smoke clears from the battlefields and the ink dries on the humiliating treaty, you sense a deep wellspring of resentment simmering beneath the surface of Chinese society. The seeds of future conflict have been sown, and the stage is set for another, even more destructive, confrontation as the world learns, slowly and painfully, that injustice rarely goes unchallenged forever. The humiliation of the First Opium War did not bring an end to the Western powers' economic exploitation of China. Rather, it emboldened them. As you watch the narrative unfold, you sense the simmering resentment within China, a wound that refused to heal, while the Western powers continued to press their advantage. The quiet years after the Treaty of Nanking were merely a prelude to another, even more destructive conflict. The spark for the Second Opium War, which began in 1856, was a manufactured outrage, the Arrow pretext. Imagine a small Chinese-owned ship, flying a British flag though its registration had expired, seized by Chinese authorities for alleged piracy. Britain, ever eager to expand its influence and rectify perceived grievances, seized upon this minor incident as a casus belli. You recognize the cynical manipulation, a flimsy excuse to launch another assault, driven by the enduring hunger for profit and imperial pride. This time, Britain was joined by France, forming a formidable Anglo-French alliance. Their motives were clear: further commercial advantages, more open ports, and deeper penetration into the Chinese market, including the continued forced trade of opium. You witness the convergence of colonial ambition, military might, and the persistent drive for economic dominance. The combined forces were overwhelming, and China, still weakened from the first conflict, stood little chance. The most egregious act of this war, a moment of profound cultural annihilation, occurred in 1860. You are transported to the outskirts of Beijing, where the exquisite old summer palace Yuanmingyuan once stood. Imagine a sprawling complex of palaces, gardens, lakes, and pavilions, a masterpiece of Chinese imperial art and architecture, filled with priceless treasures accumulated over centuries. It was a garden, in the truest sense, of unparalleled beauty and cultural significance. And then, the horror. In retaliation for the capture and mistreatment of some British and French envoys, and as a deliberate act of vengeance and psychological warfare, the Anglo-French forces systematically looted and then set fire to the old summer palace. You see the flames leaping into the sky, the priceless silks, porcelains, jades, and bronzes consumed by the inferno. The smoke, thick with the scent of burning wood and history, ascends as a testament to humanity's capacity for destruction. This was cultural annihilation as policy, a brutal act designed not just to defeat, but to demoralize and subjugate. The invaders, with a chilling detachment, called it enlightenment by fire, a perverse twist of language where the destruction of ancient beauty was justified under the banner of progress and civilization. You feel a profound sense of loss, watching millennia of artistic and architectural achievement turn to ash. It's a stark reminder that empires, in their relentless chase for control and profit, often forget the value of beauty, culture, and humanity. As the fires of the summer palace smolder, leaving behind only ruins and echoing ghosts, you are left with a haunting reflection, the true cost of imperial ambition. The wars, ostensibly about trade rights and diplomatic grievances, were fundamentally about forcing a nation to accept a drug that was destroying its people. These conflicts shattered China's sovereignty, extracted enormous wealth, and left a legacy of bitterness and resentment that would last for generations. As the smoke dissipates, carrying with it the ashes of a cultural wonder, you sense a grim normalization occurring. Opium, now firmly entrenched in China and globally, is about to become a grim, accepted reality in the Western world itself. The battles in distant China, fought over the right to sell opium, ripple across the globe. And now, your perspective shifts dramatically. You are transported back to the heart of the Western world, specifically Victorian Britain, a society outwardly prim and proper, a beacon of industrial progress and moral rectitude. Yet, beneath this veneer, an intimate and pervasive relationship with opium flourishes. The scent of coal smoke from factories mingles with the faint, medicinal aroma of laudanum, present in almost every household. Imagine a Victorian parlor, dimly lit by gaslight, perhaps a chill in the air. Laudanum, a simple tincture of opium dissolved in alcohol, is widely available and incredibly cheap. It's not seen as a dangerous street drug, but as a respectable remedy for nearly every ache and ailment. You see mothers, with weary compassion, dosing their crying infants with a few drops of the soothing syrup, hoping for a peaceful night. You might witness a factory worker, his body racked with the pain of arduous labor, finding his only respite in its dulling embrace. A society suffering from endemic pain, whether from disease, injury, or the crushing realities of industrial life, found a readily accessible solution in the poppy's liquid form. The intellectual and artistic circles of the era were no less impacted. Think of the great Romantic and Gothic writers, chasing muses in the depths of altered consciousness. Thomas de Quincey, whose Confessions of an English Opium Eater vividly documented his addiction, becoming an iconic figure. Samuel Taylor Coleridge, who famously claimed to have composed Kubla Khan in an opium-induced dream. Even the Bronte sisters, living lives of quiet intensity, are thought by some historians to have known the poppy's solace. Creativity, for many, became inextricably linked with dependency, the drug offering an illusory gateway to deeper introspection or imaginative realms. You sense the profound irony, the very substance that dulled sensation for some, seemed to sharpen the inner world for others. The mid-19th century brought a scientific breakthrough that would dramatically change the landscape of opium. Used the extraction of morphine. Scientists, through careful chemical processes, managed to isolate the primary active ingredient from the raw opium. This meant a purer, more concentrated form of the drug. Its purity, however, only served to double its danger. Imagine a tiny vial of white powder, seemingly innocuous, yet infinitely more potent than the raw plant material. And then, another innovation, seemingly miraculous at the time, but destined to accelerate addiction: the hypodermic syringe. Invented in the 1850s, this device allowed morphine to be injected directly into the bloodstream. You envision the delicate needle, the swift penetration, the immediate rush. Addiction, once primarily oral, now went intravenous, leading to a much faster, more intense high, and a far more powerful and rapid development of physical dependency. The convenience of a quick, clean injection masked the swift, insidious grip of the drug. The lesson here is stark technology, while often promising progress and efficiency, can also accelerate temptation and amplify danger. Industrial revolution, you might muse. Meet industrial relief. The same spirit of innovation that built factories and steam engines also perfected the delivery of narcotics, making escape more accessible and more potent than ever before. As the 19th century draws to a close, a new sense of optimism permeates the air, driven by breakthroughs in science and medicine. The pervasive problem of morphine addiction, exacerbated by the hypodermic syringe, prompts a desperate search for a solution. You now find yourself in the bustling, innovative laboratories of Europe, where brilliant minds are striving to create new compounds, hoping to find a safe morphine, a pain reliever that retains the poppy's efficacy without its treacherous, addictive qualities. It is 1898, and within the renowned German pharmaceutical company, Bayer, a chemist named Felix Hoffmann makes a discovery that, at first, seems like a miracle. He synthesizes diacetylmorphine, a compound he believes will be superior to morphine. Bayer, eager to capitalize on this innovation, markets it aggressively under a new, heroic name, heroin. The irony of this naming, in retrospect, is profound. This new drug is touted as non-addictive, a truly astonishing claim given its lineage. Imagine the advertisements, the confident pronouncements from doctors proclaiming a safer, gentler alternative. This was, truly, the irony of the century. Doctors, genuinely believing they had a revolutionary new tool, prescribed heroin freely. It was hailed as a wonder drug, capable of treating everything from tuberculosis to severe pain. Most disturbingly, it was even included in children's cough syrup, a seemingly innocuous remedy for common ailments. You can almost see the trusting parents administering this safe medicine to their ailing children, completely unaware of the devastating consequences lurking within each dose. The prevailing medical wisdom, despite the accumulating evidence of addiction, clung to the hope that this new formulation was somehow different, somehow better. The tragic reality, however, quickly became apparent. Instead of curing morphine addiction, heroin simply replaced it and often exacerbated it. Heroin is, in fact, 2 to 3 times more potent than morphine, and its effects on the brain are even more immediate and intense. The promise of a cure became a new, even more powerful curse. You hear the whispers of despair, the dawning realization that the miracle drug was, in fact, a more insidious form of the very problem it was meant to solve. A chilling quote from this period perfectly encapsulates the tragedy. A cure so good, it killed the cure. The pursuit of a safer alternative had led to the creation of a drug far more dangerous, demonstrating a profound misunderstanding of the chemistry of addiction. Acetylation, the chemical process by which morphine is converted into heroin, actually makes the drug more lipid-soluble, allowing it to cross the blood-brain barrier more rapidly and efficiently, leading to its heightened potency and addictive potential. You grasp the scientific mechanisms behind this betrayal. The way a slight molecular modification could have such catastrophic human consequences. There's a deep, tragic humor in the name itself. The hero that betrayed its inventor. You might muse, reflecting on Felix Hoffmann's initial hope and the subsequent devastating reality. The dream of a pain-free, non-addictive solution had been a mirage, leading humanity down an even darker path. As the 20th century dawns, grappling with the devastating consequences of this miracle drug, you sense an inevitable turning point. The world, reeling from the widespread devastation, will soon be forced to confront the global nature of addiction and attempt, for the first time, to regulate itself. The devastating consequences of widespread opium, morphine, and now heroin addiction, spanning continents and afflicting millions, finally forced the world to reckon with the poppy's dark legacy. You are now witnessing a pivotal moment in global history, the birth of international drug control. The air is charged with a new urgency, a realization that national borders cannot contain a problem so universally destructive. The first tentative steps towards global regulation were taken in 1909 at the Shanghai Opium Commission. Imagine delegates from 13 nations, including the United States, Britain, China, and Japan, gathering in this bustling Chinese city. This was the world's very first drug summit, a recognition that the problem was too vast for any single nation to tackle alone. They discussed the urgent need to suppress the opium trade, particularly its devastating impact on China. You sense the cautious optimism, the dawning hope that collective action might finally stem the tide. Building on the momentum from Shanghai, the 1912 Hague Opium Convention followed, representing an even more significant step. This was, in essence, the first true war on drugs declared on an international scale. The convention aimed to regulate the production and distribution of opium, morphine, heroin, and cocaine. Countries pledged to enact laws to control these substances within their borders. You witnessed the beginning of a bureaucratic framework, a global acknowledgement that these potent compounds required coordinated oversight. However, beneath the surface of this newfound global cooperation lay a profound hypocrisy. Many of the nations now advocating for regulation were the very ones that had profited immensely from the opium trade in the past. Colonial powers, who had facilitated or even forced opium cultivation and sales, now found themselves in the uncomfortable position of becoming regulators. You see the moral tightrope they walked, balancing historical culpability with a burgeoning sense of responsibility. The British, for instance, were slow to dismantle their opium monopoly in India, even as they signed international agreements. The United States, driven by a growing moralistic fervor and a domestic anti-drug movement, played a significant role in pushing for stricter controls. This American moralism often clashed with the more pragmatic, economically driven approaches of European colonial powers, creating tensions in the early negotiations. You observe the complex interplay of national interests, ethical concerns, and economic realities shaping these early policies. Following World War I, the newly formed League of Nations took up the mantle of international drug control, establishing committees and conventions to continue the work begun at The Hague. This solidified the global commitment to regulating narcotics, laying the groundwork for the modern international drug control system. You realize that a complex bureaucracy of guilt was slowly forming, a system designed to manage a problem that had spiraled out of control. A crucial lesson emerges from this era. Prohibition always follows profit, when the destructive impact of a highly profitable commodity becomes undeniable, and its moral and social costs too high to ignore. The impulse to ban or severely restrict it inevitably follows. The cycle of discovery, exploitation, devastation, and then regulation plays out before you. As the world attempts to rein in the poppy's power through international agreements, you sense that addiction, like a persistent shadow, will simply mutate and find new territories, new pathways, to continue its destructive journey. The early 20th century saw the world attempting to shackle the poppy through international treaties. But as you observe, addiction is a hydra cutting off one head only makes another sprout elsewhere. The narrative now shifts dramatically to the mid-20th century, a turbulent time defined by geopolitical conflicts, particularly the Cold War. You are transported to Southeast Asia, to a remote, mountainous region where the borders of Burma, now Myanmar, Laos, and Thailand converge. This rugged, isolated area, with its ideal climate and terrain for poppy cultivation, is about to become infamous, the Golden Triangle. Imagine a landscape of mist-shrouded mountains, dense jungles, and remote villages, a world far removed from the halls of international diplomacy. Here, the vacuum created by global drug control efforts, coupled with the instability of proxy wars, creates a fertile ground for the poppy to re-establish its empire. Southeast Asia replaces China as the world's primary source of illicit opium and, increasingly, heroin. You sense the raw, untamed nature of this region, a place where traditional ways of life are about to be profoundly altered by a single crop. The Cold War politics of the era provided the perfect conditions for the poppy to flourish. As the United States and its allies fought against the spread of communism, particularly in Vietnam, local warlords and anti-communist militias in the Golden Triangle became strategic assets. You witness a chilling entanglement. The CIA, in its covert operations, often found itself working with and even supporting these local warlords, many of whom were heavily involved in the opium trade. Weapons flowed in, intelligence was exchanged, and, subtly but undeniably, heroin flowed out. Consider the role of outfits like Air America, a CIA proprietary airline. While ostensibly delivering rice and humanitarian aid, it also, knowingly or unknowingly, facilitated the movement of opium and heroin. Anti-communism, you might observe with a heavy heart, was paid in heroin. The geopolitical struggles of the Cold War created a perverse economy where the fight against one ideology inadvertently fueled a global drug epidemic. The figure of Kun Sa emerges, a charismatic and ruthless Shan warlord who became the undisputed opium king of the Golden Triangle. Imagine him, a figure of immense power, commanding private armies, controlling vast swaths of territory. At his peak, he controlled an estimated 70% of the world's illicit heroin supply. You feel the immense power consolidated in one man's hands, a power derived from the suffering of millions. To understand the geographical significance, picture a map of this region, the remote, largely ungoverned corridor where Burma, Laos, and Thailand meet. This was the heartland, the ideal location for an illicit industry to thrive. Shielded by rugged terrain and political instability, the isolation provided cover, the poverty provided labor, and the global demand provided boundless profit. There's a grim, almost cynical humor in this twisted scenario. The only war both sides could win. You might reflect, for the warlords, it was about power and immense wealth. For the anti-communist forces, it was about securing allies and funding operations. The true losers, of course, were the countless addicts across the globe. As the jungles of the Golden Triangle slowly recede from view, you sense that this cycle of conflict and cultivation is far from over. And a new, even more volatile region is about to take center stage in the tragic story of the Poppy Afghanistan. As the geopolitical chess game of the Cold War continues, the focus of the Poppy's empire shifts once more, this time to the rugged, breathtakingly harsh landscapes of Afghanistan. You are now observing a land steeped in ancient history and tribal loyalties. A place that, through a confluence of war and desperation, is about to become the world's largest producer of opium. The air here is dry and thin, carrying the scent of dust, mountains, and the unmistakable aroma of conflict. The Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979 marks a tragic turning point, as a brutal, decade-long war engulfs the country. The poppy transforms into wartime currency. Imagine the desperate struggle for survival, the collapse of traditional economies, and the sudden, overwhelming need for resources to fund resistance. Opium, readily cultivated and easily traded, became the lifeblood of the conflict. It was a means to purchase weapons, pay fighters, and sustain communities torn apart by war. You witness a complex and tragic web of alliances and dependencies. The Mujahideen, Afghan resistance fighters, needed funds and weapons. The CIA, supporting the Mujahideen in their fight against the Soviets, facilitated the flow of arms. Pakistan's ISI Inter-Services Intelligence acted as a conduit. And, in this convoluted process, a new, insidious trade emerged. Weapons flowed in, and heroin flowed out. The Khyber Pass, an ancient trade route connecting Afghanistan and Pakistan, became the artery of two addictions: the addiction to war and the addiction to heroin. You feel the profound sorrow of a land caught in a seemingly endless cycle of violence and narcotic production. By the 1980s, Afghanistan had tragically earned the moniker the Saudi Arabia of opium. Its vast, often lawless regions, perfect for poppy cultivation, produced an astonishing percentage of the global supply. Warlords, empowered by the chaos of war, solidified their control, building narco-states where the poppy was sovereign, dictating power, wealth, and survival. You see the deep entrenchment of this illicit economy, becoming an inescapable part of the national fabric. Then, a surprising twist emerges with the rise of the Taliban in the mid-1990s. Initially, the Taliban, seeking to establish a puritanical Islamic state, enacted a strict ban on poppy cultivation. For a brief, dramatic period in 2000, this ban was remarkably effective, wiping out an estimated 90% of the global opium crop almost overnight. Imagine the fields, once bursting with crimson, now stark and barren. It was a testament to their absolute authority, but also a move that devastated the livelihoods of countless Afghan farmers, driving many to extreme poverty However, the ban was short-lived and complex. The Taliban, ever pragmatic, soon realized the immense revenue potential. They shifted from outright prohibition to taxing the opium trade, effectively becoming the world's first government-run drug cartel. The world's first government-run drug cartel. You might muse with a touch of dark humor, highlighting the profound moral compromises made in the pursuit of power and resources. Then came the seismic event of 9/11 and the subsequent U.S. invasion of Afghanistan in 2001. The geopolitical landscape was shattered and reformed, and with it, the fate of the poppy. You sense the tragic inevitability of what is to come, as the war on terror tragically intersects with the war on drugs, setting the stage for yet another resurgence of the poppy's enduring power. The dust of the 9/11 attacks and the ensuing U.S. occupation of Afghanistan settles, but the poppy's resilient roots quickly find purchase in the chaos. Your journey has brought you to the present, to a stark and painful realization: the war on terror has, inadvertently, revived the empire of smoke. The air now carries the digital hum of modern warfare alongside the ancient, earthy scent of the poppy. Imagine the post-invasion landscape of Afghanistan. The Taliban's brutal ban on poppy cultivation, which had drastically cut global supply, is almost immediately lifted. Under the banner of reconstruction and economic stability, Afghan farmers, many of whom faced starvation after years of war and the Taliban's previous edicts, return to the only crop that promises a reliable income. You see the desperate choice. What else feeds a family in ashes? The poppy, resilient and profitable, becomes the default crop in a land scarred by conflict, a desperate means of survival for millions. The consequence is immediate and devastating. Global heroin demand, far from being curbed, surges back, higher than ever before. The international community, while fighting extremism, grapples with the unintended consequence of a booming drug trade that fuels corruption and insurgency. You realize a profound, agonizing truth: prohibition, particularly when it fails to address the underlying economic desperation, often sustains the very product it seeks to eliminate. The demand remains, and where there is demand, supply will always find a way. Simultaneously, in the Western world, particularly in the United States, a different kind of opium crisis is unfolding. Science has advanced significantly, offering a deeper understanding of addiction itself. We now know, with unsettling clarity, how morphine and its derivatives hijack the brain's dopamine reward system. Imagine the intricate neural pathways, the delicate balance of neurotransmitters, suddenly overwhelmed by the surge of artificial pleasure, leading to a relentless craving that rewires the very essence of human will. You grasp the biological imperative of addiction, the profound difficulty of escape. And yet, despite this advanced understanding, history repeats itself with a chilling precision. Pharmaceutical opiates, marketed aggressively and prescribed liberally, become the digital opium of the 21st century. Consider the rise of drugs like OxyContin, originally promoted as a less addictive, long-acting painkiller. The marketing campaigns, the reassurances from doctors, the widespread availability all echo the deceptive promises of heroin a century earlier. We replace the pipe with a prescription. You might muse, a bitter, dark humor coloring the tragedy. The irony is profound in a century of unprecedented scientific and technological progress. Humanity seems to be repeating the 19th century mistakes, simply with more sophisticated means. The quest for pain relief remains, as does the susceptibility to addiction. But the delivery mechanisms have changed. As you observe this modern chapter, the parallels are undeniable, the lessons unlearned. The perpetual struggle between the desire for comfort and the insidious nature of dependency continues, hinting at an even deeper, more fundamental challenge that humanity has yet to fully confront. Your long journey, tracing the silent, potent history of the poppy, now draws to a close, as you reflect on the millennia we've traversed together. From the Fertile Crescent to the digital age, let your mind play a slow, melancholic montage. You see the crimson petals of the poppy, blooming endlessly across time from their first appearance under a Bronze Age sun, to their presence in Sumerian clay jars, then to the fields of Egypt, the temples of Greece, the vast empire of Rome, the scientific laboratories of Baghdad, the caravans of the Silk Road, the gardens of the Mughals, the tea-filled ports of China, the smoky parlors of Victorian Britain, the industrial labs of Germany, the mist-shrouded peaks of the Golden Triangle, and finally, the war-torn mountains of Afghanistan. And now, you see it, in a pharmaceutical capsule, a sterile pill, sitting innocently in a modern medicine cabinet. The reflection that emerges is both profound and somber. We never truly conquered pain, we simply outsourced it. We learned to numb it, to defer it, to trade it for a temporary oblivion. The very act of seeking external relief for an internal experience, you realize, is a mirror reflecting civilization's fatigue, its endless struggle against suffering, and its often unwise shortcuts to solace. Addiction itself, in this grand historical tapestry, stands as a mirror of our civilization's exhaustion. The relentless pace of progress, the constant pressure, the pervasive anxieties all seem to fuel a persistent longing for escape, a desire to simply stop. The poppy has always been there, a patient, silent witness to this human need, offering its powerful gift, demanding its inevitable price. This entire saga brings forth a fundamental moral question. Where does the line lie between legitimate pain relief and the slow, insidious decay of moral fiber? When does the search for comfort become a surrender of self? These are not easy answers, for the boundaries often blur, shifting with culture, science, and individual desperation. In closing this long journey, a philosophical truth emerges, carried on the gentle breeze through ancient fields. The poppy never lied, only the humans did. The flower simply offered its potent chemistry. It was humanity, in its desperation, ingenuity, greed, and hope, that spun tales around it, tales of joy, of mercy, of healing, and ultimately, of betrayal. The plant itself, in its silent, crimson beauty, remained constant. As we drift to a gentle close, consider the intricate neuroscience of pain, the complex systems within your own body that interpret sensation. And consider, too, the societal empathy required to truly address suffering, not just by numbing it, but by understanding its roots and offering genuine pathways to healing and hope. The quiet fades, leaving only the echo of a heartbeat, a whisper of wind through fields long past, and the profound, lingering question: what do you think humanity truly wanted from the flower of sleep?